everyone, and welcome to this episode of Beyond Insights, and to all our American listeners, happy 4th of July. And today we have a 4th of July special in honor of 4th of July. So for those of you who are not sure what that is, well, it's Independence Day in the United States, and this commemorates the passage of the Declaration of Independence by the Continental Congress in 1776. So there's your little bit of history, and this is when America gained its independence from Great Britain. So we're not in America. You can probably hear from my accent. We're based in South Africa, but we actually work with a lot of US clients, and this time last week I just arrived back from a trip to the US, and so today we have this special 4th of July episode, and I'm joined by Daniel Hall, who is a customer success manager for the US region. So we're here to find out a little bit about how it is working with that region, get some insights if you're thinking of going into working there, or if you are someone who is based in America, just to find out a bit more about what it's like working in that area. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, lovely to be here.
To get started, I've done a lot of talking, now it's your turn. Can you maybe introduce yourself, give us a bit of background, how you came to be at Syft?
Yep, will do. Yeah, so like Jody said, my name is Daniel. I am a customer success manager here at Syft Analytics. I've been in this role for about 18 months or so now. A bit on my background, I've been in Johannesburg my whole life, schooled here. I then went through to the University of Pretoria to do my studies in finance and investment. I then had a couple of jobs in between, also on the account manager side of things. And then I made my way to Syft, where I have been happily ever since then.
Good to hear.
So yeah, got that accounting background, so it kind of made sense for me to pivot into the Syft environment.
Cool. So I think it's important that you have that accounting background and that business. So can you give us a little bit more of an insight into what you do at Syft Analytics? What would your day-to-day role involve?
All right. So I'm dealing with customers that are already existing. They've gone through all the channels, and I'm basically responsible for keeping them on Syft. Part of my role is training all the clients, making sure that their staff and any users, even different clients of the people that I speak to, are able to use the platform, generate the reports that they're looking for, and essentially get what they pay for. It's my job to make sure that they signed on to Syft with a purpose. They're trying to generate a specific set of reports, or they're trying to get certain insights. I'm there to make sure that they're essentially able to get those. I help them along the way. Some of you who are familiar with Syft, you may have seen me on a couple of webinars or on some trainings. So yeah, it's a lot of training and kind of guiding of the clients to get the best out of the system and the service that we offer.
So I think I really like how you summarize it. Obviously, there's like the day-to-day training, or like being on demos or showing people how to use it. But the ultimate goal seems to be making sure that people get value for money. They're getting what they paid for. So I think that's a really good top tip for anyone who's going into customer service, wherever you are, whether you're in South Africa or you're dealing with clients all over the world, to make sure that you kind of know what your goal is. And it's to make sure they get value, and then you figure out how to do that. So
yeah, 100%. I always try and make it part of my initial meetings with the customers to find out exactly what they are looking for. And the approach that I take personally is to find out and try and get, if it's a specific report or some insights that they need, I try and get that kind of sorted within the first couple of weeks, so that once they've paid, they have a deliverable that they're able to use, almost like a bit of a test or a sandbox. And then from then we can roll it out across the rest of their clients, or wherever it needs to be rolled out to, essentially.
Awesome. So really great insight, like right off the second question there. So next up, as I mentioned before, you are based in the US region.
Yes.
And that comes with some interesting hours, which we'll touch on a bit later. But can you give us some insights in what it's like dealing with people in America and with American customers, and anything that you find unique about American customers?
What I will say about American customers, and whether that's United States or Canada, is I feel like they put a lot of value on the support that they receive. If you're able to kind of provide them with feedback if there is a query that they have, and you kind of keep them in the loop and follow up with them, let them know exactly what's going on, they are very receptive to that. I've also found about them that they are quite open to your ideas. If they kind of stuck in a certain way of reporting, or even they've got their stuff set up in a certain way. On Syft, it may be slightly different. They're generally quite open to seeing the way that we'll present it, and then we can kind of educate them and help them to build what they want on Syft as well.
I think that's awesome. I think, I think it's awesome they demand, or not demand, that's the wrong word, but they like expect a really good level of customer support.
Yeah.
Because I think that, makes us rise to the challenge to give them good support. And being open to new things and innovations and stuff, that's a really positive point there.
I think I would also say what's surprised me about working in the US region, because it was my first time working with the US and Canadian clients, was the diversity of the people. Obviously, coming from South Africa, we're a rainbow nation. We've got pretty much every culture you could think of. I was very surprised by the fact that I have met with people who are based in America or Canada, but they're from Asia, Africa, pretty much anywhere from around the globe. So if I thought that South Africa was diverse, I would say the US probably tops us there.
No. I think it's a tough competition. I'm proudly South African, so I'm it's going to be tough to convince me. No, but I agree. It's definitely very diverse. So I think obviously we're speaking about the North American region and the USA because that's where you deal with mostly. But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of lessons that are generic from clients. So maybe if you can share some insights that you've learned from speaking to clients, helping them implement Syft. Obviously, your experience will be mostly from North America. But what are some of the things that insights you've gained from dealing with different clients?
I think it's important to note when it comes to supporting clients and training clients is that there's no real one size fits all when it comes to that. Different practices or individuals could be receptive to different kind of forms of training and different forms of assistance. So it's really kind of taking it case by case and kind of going back to my initial point about finding what that pain point is or what the goal is. So whether that client is a massive accounting practice or a single business, I think it's very important to just find out what's the goal. Because once there's a goal that you have in mind and that they have in mind, it really makes it easier to align your paths to go through and essentially achieve that.
I think, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, I'm involved in the training. Dan and I do lots of training together. And we often find that, the training you need to give depends very much on how well the person already knows the system, but also how technically savvy they are, So some clients, digital and cloud and computers might be very new to them. And so you need to have a different approach to someone else who's going to be very frustrated if you're telling them, this is how you click your mouse, So you have to get a good understanding. And that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying. You need to understand where your client's at and understand, as you said, what they're trying to solve. And then you can kind of figure out the best way to assist them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you also, on that point, you have to be quite patient. Like, as you said, some people are very tech savvy. You show them something once and then the next week they're showing you how to do something. And then on the other side, there may be certain people where you show them something and then the next week you kind of have to show them the same thing. So it's also a lot of patience, but it's very important to, like I said, just understand what they're looking to achieve, understand that it's not going to be the same. Some people will take a week, some people will take a month, some people will take a year. So that's what I'll say on that.
I think it comes down to listening more than speaking. So obviously we're doing lots of speaking on this podcast, but when you're dealing with clients, I think there's a ratio. I'm sure there's a saying. You got to listen a lot more than you speak to actually truly understand.
Definitely.
Okay, so next one. So obviously dealing with clients. I'm sure most of the time they're happy. They're always
of
just
course.
giving praises.
The client is always right as well.
No, definitely. That's for sure. But I'm sure, every now and then, maybe there's a client that's not quite, happy with the service or what the product's doing or just whatever it is. How do you, what have you learned about dealing with conflict resolution and then also maybe as a kind of a second point, problem solving when it comes to, dealing with client issues?
I would say it also comes back to like if there is a problem, so if there's a conflict that needs to be resolved, it's also asking the right questions and trying to understand if they're upset, what are they upset about, and like why are they upset. And then it's also, like you said, listening, finding out what the problem is, and then also even if maybe I can't sort it out myself, it's also about speaking to a broader team and kind of getting assistance from the wider team. And with that, it's also, you always have to be patient, because sometimes people will come in a bit hot, they'll be fuming about something, but then maybe it's just they're not using it correctly. So it's also, understanding tone and behavior and like body language as well. Even though it's mostly on Zoom meetings, it's very easy to see if someone's upset or, sad about something. So it's also just kind of reading those cues, and like I said, just finding the problem and then taking your time to work through it with them.
And I think that what I've seen when we've worked on some issues together, you're very good at kind of seeing it through till the end.
Yeah.
I think if someone comes through and they're upset, I think the only thing in life is you're going to make a mistake at some point, right?
Of course.
Obviously we all strive to be perfect, but at some point we're going to miss an email or reply a bit late, or something's going to go wrong. But I think it speaks more about how you solve that. If you can kind of be consistent and like make sure that you don't stop kind of communicating until the problem is solved and they're happy. So yeah, I'm telling you what you do here, because I've seen you do it very well, and I think that's great. Okay, so I think you obviously have a lot of experience from dealing with customers, and specifically, customers that are in a different region to what you're specifically used to. So do you have any tips or tricks for any of our listeners that work with clients, across borders and different cultures and different like world experience?
I will say it's very important to be aware of and do your best to pick up on different kind of cultural nuances that there may be. Certain people react to certain statements or words differently. I've learned that also, being in South Africa, we have an interesting kind of combination of languages. I myself, I've got a bit of Afrikaans, a bit of English, so I use a lot of slang. So it's important to kind of, when you're in those meetings or those situations, use language that the people can understand. And then, as time goes on, I've had a couple of, situations where I've got quite close to the client or the customer. As we go through, they're like, okay, Daniel, teach me some Afrikaans or some slang terms. I obviously don't teach them any of the bad ones.
No.
We would never do that as South Africans. But yeah, I think that's one thing to add there. Please remind me of the question, sorry.
No, perfect. So it's any tips and tricks for customers working with different
I've actually got a few of these. Specifically, if you are working with US-based customers, I would always recommend, unless you know them off by heart off the bat, have an app or a list or something like that that lets you know about the different time zones that your customers are in. Obviously, in the States, they've got like over 3, 4, 5 different time zones. So scheduling meetings and phone calls can be a bit tough. So if you at least have an app or a list open of their specific time zones, that really does help. I had a situation at my previous company. This would never happen to me at Syft. Like, there's approximately no chance of me accidentally phoning a American clients at 5 a.m. As you can imagine, they were very chuffed to hear from me, asking about their payments. So, always
the worst thing to ask about, at least if you were like asking if they were happy with, their reporting or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Payment, not so much.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So there were a few choice words used on that phone call, which is understandable.
Fair enough.
I would do the same.
Yeah.
That's the one thing, the main thing I would say, especially because a lot of our job is organizing meetings and it's a lot of face-to-face back and forth. Having the time zones kind of sorted, it makes it very easy to jump on a call and say, okay, cool, I know you're in Eastern, let's set up a time for next week, Wednesday, 10 o'clock. Just kind of makes collaboration also much easier. On that as well, also take note of international public holidays. Today is obviously the 4th of July, so you would expect that I wouldn't have too many meetings. But it's still kind of full because there's a bunch of Canadians, and then some of the US people who did book with me didn't show because they forgot about their public holidays. So you guys should also watch your own ones. So it's also mainly the time zone and kind of scheduling. Like, you've got to understand that if you are working with people in a different time zone, their responses could be delayed. There could be, and that could lead to issues. If it's like an urgent issue and you're only replying to them every 8 hours or vice versa, that could kind of stop the delay or stop the issue getting sorted, which could kind of build up to additional problems. So yeah, just important to make sure that your communication is also, always clean.
Yeah, and I think obviously we account for a lot of that by working different hours for different regions.
Yeah.
But I kind of work normal-ish hours, and you have to keep that in mind. You know, if you will work with implementations and there's a US client, I'm like, I need to make sure I've responded by 2 p.m. my time, because that's 8 a.m. their time, and then at least there's no delays, you know. So you really have to kind of keep that in mind, so that you don't, as Dan says, take 3 days to solve one issue, because then no one is going to be happy about that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like your time zone app. When I first started here, it used to confuse me a lot. And then you get it sorted, and then there's daylight saving. And now everything is different.
Yes.
So I also, took your tip there. I have an app now. That's great. But I do like what you're saying about making notes of where clients are, because you know, you think you'll remember, but there's a lot going on. So.
And I also use that as a bit of an icebreaker when it's like an onboarding or my first meeting with a client. We have a system, so I can technically see where they're based, but I generally like to throw that in there as like one of my first questions to get an understanding. I'll always say, hey, where are you from? They'll say and give me a little bit of a background, and then I always play this game with them. I always try and ask them where they think I'm from. 99% of the time they'll say I'm from Australia. 1% of the time they'll say England. Nobody ever guesses South Africa unless they have like a South African colleague or something like that. So it's always good like to kind of build that rapport with them, make it slightly less, you know, formal to start. Also then, because then they'll get to kind of know me a bit. I'm that guy. I like to crack jokes. Obviously, when it needs to be serious, very serious. But also do like to get the bit of the banter flowing, because if you can create that kind of rapport with the clients, then generally they will be more receptive to suggestions that you have or different ways of doing things. And then if there is maybe potentially an issue down the road, they'll be kind of less inclined to come in too hot, and because they know the people behind the platform. So yeah, I do find that it helps to kind of build that relationship with them.
I think relationship building, definitely can attest to that. I think not even that they won't come in hot. I think they know that they can, like, they know you, they know that you care, and so they're going to come to you with problems. I know in my experience in auditing, we also used to do something similar. You need to build relationships with the people that you were working with.
Of course.
And even, I just forgot what I was going to say. I had such a good analogy, and now I've forgotten it. We had managers, and when managers didn't build rapport, their team was nervous to raise issues with them. And so things would kind of drag on, whereas if other managers were more like approachable, people would raise issues earlier. So I think that's something similar. You know, you want to make sure your clients feel comfortable to say, I'm not happy with this, because then you can do something about it, you know? Yeah,
and on the flip side, then they're also more inclined to reach out to you and say, you know what, thank you. Like, I'm so happy with this. This is amazing. They'll leave reviews, that sort of thing. So,
and that's obviously all we get, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, none of the other stuff. Okay, cool. So on that, obviously, the United States and Canada is a very big place. I took a flight last year from New York to San Francisco, and it was 6 hours. And I thought it was, just internal. It was very, very long. So it's a very big place. Does your approach differ per state, or, US versus Canada? When you kind of reaching out to clients, what impacts how you would approach them?
I would say it's probably less by the state and more on the type of business or practice that they are. Kind of ties back into what we were chatting about earlier, where there's no one size fits all. An accounting practice with 1,000 clients who are just looking to run 1,000 monthly management reports a month will need different assistance and onboarding to a single business who's struggling with cash flow and has got Syft to help analyze that. I'll say it's honestly depends on the practice more so than the region that they're based in. But that being said, there are different generalizations you can make about the different regions. I'm going to make an example similar to here in South Africa. Most people will agree that Johannesburg and Cape Town are slightly different in terms of the vibe, the flow, and the pace of work, and I see similar correlations to like the east and west coast of US. Generally, the guys on the east coast, 10 a.m. is the earliest meeting from what I've experienced, whereas your guys kind of on the west coast and kind of more inland, they'll be taking meetings 7, 8 o'clock. Obviously not everybody, but generally California, all those guys, 10 a.m. starts, which is probably not the same, but similar to Cape Town. So also that also determines things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those generalizations can always be interesting. I always also worked with a team from Cape Town, and they were all lovely, awesome people. But yeah, when I asked them for a 7 a.m. meeting, they were like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
That's very early. Whereas in Joburg, like at least when I was in audit, like that happened all the time. So
yeah, I don't know if it has to do with the further north you go, the colder it gets, so people wake up earlier.
That's valid, maybe.
I'm not sure, because I found the Canadians, they love a early morning, 7 o'clock. They're ready. So yeah.
Interesting. I think it's always so interesting to learn about different cultures, and yeah, to become a global citizen. So that's very cool. So I think we've spoken a lot about time zones. As I mentioned, you work interesting hours to make sure that we really can give great support to our customers. So your team finishes at 11 p.m. local time. And then like what happens, so maybe just give us a bit of insights into, what that's like, but then also what happens between, when you leave and when the customers, come back online. How do we make sure that the day team actually knows what issues they are and stuff like that?
Yeah, so here at Syft, we pretty much work 24/7. We've got customer support managers or a product support team that works around the clock. So we've got our team that clocks in. I'm going to put this all in South African hours. We've got what we call our Australasian team. They clock in at about 4 a.m., go to about 2. Then we've got our normal people. Well, we say normal 9 to 5, 8 to 5 South African hours, who work to cater for the UK, and then of course South Africans and Europe. And then we've got myself and our team. We do 2 to 11. We call it night shift. Obviously, it's not completely in the night. But yeah, there's no real kind of overflow. There is always support on Syft. But when it comes to dealing with issues or kind of maybe not problems, but queries or anything like that, we have good internal processes that make sure that the team is always kind of collaborating, communicating. If there's something that I'm dealing with and then I'm done for the day or I need to step out, we've got a lot of internal channels that I can go through and kind of say, listen, can you please help me with this? Can you please help me with this? So yeah, I'd say the most important thing is processes, and also having a team that kind of works together. Our customer support team is amazing. We're almost like a family. We always jumping in to assist each other. And part of that is also being able to like ask your team for assistance. If I'm overworked or like got too much on my plate and I've got some stuff that I need assistance with, I know that I can ask my team, whether that's someone from the US hours or the UK hours, whoever it may be, to kind of jump in and assist. So it's always, there's always a good flow of making sure that things are sorted.
No, I think there's some key insights there, like communication and processes. And I think that can kind of override time zones. Obviously, for time zones, it's a big deal. So 100%. Stuff that doesn't kind of like take 3 days to solve. And, the person who maybe needs to help with the query might not be there at that time. But you don't want to wait a whole day. So that's super important. But just in general, like often client queries will come in no matter what industry you're in. And you need to make sure that you actually asking the right people, you're working together, and that it, gets followed through. So yeah, lots of lessons for us all there. So I think we are heading towards the end. It's been a really insightful session. So I just have one more question for you. So what would you like listeners to take away from everything that we've discussed today about customer support and, working globally with different regions?
I would say that bald eagles are cool. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Definitely.
But on a more serious note, I would say, at the risk of kind of repeating myself here, it's just about finding out what the end goal is and what the key point from the customer is. It's very easy to calm people down or kind of service people very well when you understand them, you understand what they need. So I think that is like the main thing when it comes to being on the customer side of things, is understanding their needs.
No, I think that's a really good takeaway. And I think there's definitely a lot to get from Dan's experience when it comes from, dealing with the rest of the world. Today we're really connected with everyone. Even when I was in audit, I deal with people from all over the world. And so you have to understand those cultural nuances, get that time zone app. I hope that you guys got value from, what Dan said about how you can really service clients and make sure that they're getting value from whatever it is that you are offering them. So thank you so much for joining us, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it and enjoyed it. We'll see you all next time on the next episode of Beyond Insights. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast.
Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.